Your boat docks at one of the smallest of the Canary Islands off the northwestern coast of Africa. Some peace and quiet, finally. This place isn't as touristy as some other islands you've been to. Its main sites are a house where Christopher Columbus stayed on his first transatlantic voyage and numerous hills. You can hear the sounds of the waves and the birds, and wait, was that someone whistling in the distance? The whistle is soon answered by another one in a different tone. The guide explains it's not just some teenagers playing around. The guys are actually busy preserving one of the most unusual languages in the world. It's Silbo Gomero, and it's only spoken on La Gomera Island. And no, the locals aren't all opera singers or musicians. This beautiful way of communication was born out of necessity. As you see, the terrain here on La Gomera is basically going from hilltop to hilltop with deep ravines in between. Now imagine you have an important message to deliver to someone living on the other side of the ravine. You'd have to climb up and down and up and down. I'm getting a bit tired. Shouting whole sentences in some regular language won't take you far, unless you have some special equipment. Plus, it would be quite disturbing. So why don't we try to whistle the message and send it across several miles this way? That was probably the thinking that the locals had when they decided to announce important events, request livestock, and warn of approaching danger using a drifting, piercing sound. The language has existed for several centuries, although no one knows exactly who invented it or when. We can only be sure that the first European settlers set foot on this land in the 15th century, and Silbo Gomero was already a thing back then. The local population of North Africans originally used whistles to communicate, and it wasn't just some musical gibberish. The whistles reproduced their language consisting of words. The Spanish then adapted the whistling language to their own. So, the Silbo Gomero you can master now uses 6 kinds of sounds. 2 of the whistles stand for the 5 spoken vowels in Spanish, and the remaining replace the 22 consonants. All the whistlers have to do is to make sounds longer or shorter to mimic the real words. The language has over 4,000 of them. The most proficient speakers, or rather whistlers, use different methods to make sounds and can recognize others by the accent of their whistle. But to make it more clear, most whistlers first introduce themselves and name the recipient of the message. When the recipient understands the message, they respond with a whistle, which means bueno bueno. In the 1950s, Silbo Gomero was so popular on the island that whistlers had to wait in line to deliver their messages. They were mostly farmers who needed to share instructions with others. In the following decades, most of the agricultural lands were abandoned, and many of the workers left, so whistling across the valleys was becoming less and less common. In the 1990s, with all the new forms of communication spreading and new roads being built on the island, the local authorities got really concerned about the future of their unique language. They added it to the elementary school program. In 2009, UNESCO officially acknowledged the language as a cultural heritage. So, if you're good at whistling, you could tell everybody back home you've mastered a new language while traveling. Hopefully, there won't be any real Silbo Gomero speakers nearby. Don't feel like whistling? Well then, you might appreciate the language of the Parajas, who hide deep in the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. These guys literally live in the present. They don't create myths. Only what they see right here, right now is real. It's also why they don't make up complicated sentences in different tenses. They only describe what they know and see. The good news is that there are just 8 consonants and 3 vowels. The bad news is it's based on tones and stresses a lot. There are no words for numbers. There is a small amount and a larger amount. All, each, every, most, and few don't exist either. If you're still into learning their language, don't expect a lesson on colors. There are just no words for them. A red cup is not red. It's the color of a berry everyone in the tribe knows. The Parajas like to mean business, so there's no room for fluff in their language. Instead of saying thank you, they give each other gifts or do something nice. They also use suffixes that replace whole phrases. For example, instead of saying, "I know my neighbor has picked up the flower because I saw her do it," they'd use just one suffix, meaning that you're certain because you saw it with your own eyes. They like to ask direct questions like, "Where is the hut?" and answer them without any special words. It's by the river. Sound way too complicated? Well, how about a language that has the smallest alphabet ever, with only 12 letters and 11 sounds? Around 4,300 people who live on an island to the east of New Guinea have the pleasure of using Rotocus as their language. Except for a rather limited alphabet, Rotocus has a rather regular word order. Adjectives and pronouns come before the nouns they modify. 7 million people in South Africa use Xhosa language to communicate. It's a language based on 3 types of clicks, and the only way to feel the difference between words is by using a system of tones. If you want to master this language, plan to stay here a while. Aymara can hardly be called a rare language because it has around 2 million speakers and is one of the official languages of Bolivia and Peru. But it definitely deserves a shout-out as a super original language because of its tense system. The feature is seen as something that lies behind you and not in front of you like we're used to. It's because it's something we don't know anything about and we can't see it, so it's behind us. I know, I don't get it either. But anyway, another cool thing, nouns don't have gender. And you gotta thank Aymara for the word alpaca. Ah. Tijuca language is way less spread, with only around 1,000 speakers living in Brazil and Colombia. Tijuca has over 100 genders for words, and it's one of those languages that pile up morphemes to build super long words that replace entire sentences. Here's what the phrase, "I do not know how to write," would look like in Tijuca. Don't even ask. I won't read it for you. It's above my pay grade. I need an Advil. My head is starting to ache from all that linguistic diversity. Why don't we just invent one simple language that all people around the world could study and never need to use a translator again? When I get a Nobel Prize for my idea, I will… Oh, wait. Of course, someone already had that idea. A Polish ophthalmologist created Esperanto back in 1887. It is the most successful artificial language so far, with over 100,000 speakers. If you have experience with any European languages, mostly French, Italian, Spanish, Romanian, English, German, and of course, the language creator's native Polish, you should have no trouble understanding Esperanto. It derived roots from these languages and uses a really simple rule. You spell the words the way you pronounce them. You'll easily recognize different parts of speech by their endings. Nouns, for example, have no gender and end in O. Verbs only have one form for each tense or mood. I go, they go, he or she goes. There will be one verb form for all of them. There's a whole bunch of suffixes that you can add to word roots to change the meaning. And here comes my personal favorite. There are 16 rules and not a single exception. That there might have helped my language grade back in high school. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.